Okay, so we are right on 12 p.m. So I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're very glad to be teaming with AustCham Korea, our friends across the pond, as well as our member Elsyung to bring you this webinar today, focusing on HR and its role in your business success. I'm Emily Helens, I'm the Executive Director at ANZCCJ, and very glad to have a lot of our members joining us today from all over the world. We've got a lot of Japanese, Australian, New Zealand people joining in, so a truly global webinar today. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Elsie, but just to remind you all, so she is the founder of Elsyung Consulting, a boutique and holistic people solutions and development programs consulting agency. They deliver a lot of very meaningful impact to a lot of companies all over the world, or they're based in Hong Kong, expanding globally as well. A reminder before I hand over to Elsie for today's session, we will be opening for Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions, do please pop them in the Q&A function, which you can find at the bottom of your screen as well, and we will get to those at the end. A reminder, we're also recording this session, so if you have to jump out earlier, if you want to come back and revisit any of the content, you'll be able to find it on the ANZCCJ or the AustCham Korea's respective YouTube accounts at a later date. So I think that is enough for me to kick off. Thank you again, Elsie, and to the AustCham Korea team. I'm very glad to have you all here with us today. And over to you, Elsie. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So once again, thank you, ANZCCJ and also AustCham Korea to give me this opportunity to share my experience and some stories, hopefully, with regards to HR. So let me get on, to share my screen first. Hope everyone can see that. And let me pop it up in this mode. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's get started. So I also welcome, comments and, your experience sharing, towards the end as well, because this topic, I'm really, really passionate about talking, why HR can be, more on the front end of the ecosystem to actually drive business success. As people talk about HR, always talk about, at the back end, right? So why HR can be more on the front end. So a little bit about myself, my company. So Emily just share a little bit. So my company indeed, provide a holistic people solutions across the board. So we act as an enterprise doctor for, in particular, for these small, medium-sized corporations. To support them over the journey of, make sure that their people practices are all in line and also more effective. At the same time, we also provide development solutions and also do our balance of life program or more focusing on wellness side. A little bit about myself, I work across the board in my corporate life. Yeah, so I started off my business officially almost 2 years now. Used to be, working in different multinational companies, in particular with the huge connections with the Australian companies. So that's why so far I've been involving quite a bit in the Australian chamber side of things, even, within Hong Kong. So myself, yeah, so I look after HR in my previous role. So that's why I'm very, very passionate about this topic. In involving, how to translate the large corporation practices to an SME perspective. So today's agenda, so probably we'll spend roughly about 50 minutes to share, those topics and also some of my experience dealing with HR, kind of solutions. So yeah, so obviously people is your top priority. As long as your company has employees, this is a very, very critical aspects that we need to look at. Why HR or per se, people management is important to a successful business. Yeah, so why is that? Because as I said, a lot of the SME clients, they told me that, HR is not important because we don't have that resource to hire a designated HR person. So why we need HR? We will just make sure that we pay is okay. Yeah, so we'll look into that, into this perspective. And HR function or person, or even HR is being performed by the founder or the boss. Like, why is the best partner to drive success? So we look into 3 dimensions: vitality and business continuity, productivity and efficiency, and of course, many owners, they need to look at that cost reduction in particular, during the COVID times, and really, really difficult, managing business at that stage. So how we start with the limited resources then? So I'll also introduce one solution that our company can provide. Obviously, this is something that is easy to use, so that we can share a little bit of that. So people is your top priority, of course. As I said, as long as your company has staff, so no matter how good your products or your services are, people is the key to deliver. Okay. So in that sense, why people management is important to a successful business then? So employees are the foundation of every successful business. So I've got one client, actually, they have only like 2 people full-time. So she is a fashion designer. So she's got only 2 full-time people, but she hired a lot of part-timers. So initially, when we kind of discuss, we feel like that, she doesn't feel like HR is important because there's not really a need for HR, right? But first of all, like when we look at employees, doesn't matter whether they are full-time or part-time, or even though they are contractors. We want to create a productive environment where people feel valued and motivated. So with that example, so what is it, a productive environment? Is that because she is a fashion designer, so she has to organize different fashion shows and also different events, and she has collections every new season. So that's why she needs people to support her on top of her own ideas to perform her designing job, right? So she needs people to organize events, or even preparing paperwork for her. Okay, so that's why like whether that person, the employees are full-time, part-time, or contractors, they need to feel that valued and also being motivated, and of course ensure the smooth operations and also safety at work. Okay, so even work in the office environment, we are very much concerned about occupational health and safety. For people, we need to make sure that they actually they can empower the top line and also safeguard the bottom line. So we need people to help us to grow our business, to elevate the revenue, right? To have more sales. We do a lot of product lines and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we also need to make sure that we manage the process, our people processes, in order to save costs, to safeguard the bottom line. I'm sure that under COVID situation, a lot of companies they are considering cutting costs. They cut down benefits. They even have to ask people have to go on no pay leave, something like that. Yeah. So in order to survive, right? That's why part of the people management solution is we need to look at all the costs that we are spending on our business. And then we look at any efficiencies can be made, and or any collaboration with other partners can be made in order to safeguard that bottom line. At the same time, we need to prevent risk and make sure that we have that positive environment in the organization. At the end of the day, the company is looking for growth, right? So we make use of the people management processes actually to achieve a long-term goals of the business. Yeah, so we partner, the processes actually help the business to grow along the way. And with different dimensions, because under people management, we also provide analytics. we provide different numbers to support the business owners to make important decisions. Yeah, whether they want to, whether they want to expand or whether they want to cut down their resources. As I said, like a lot of SME owners, in particular in Hong Kong, they actually reshuffle all their resources, from maybe moving from a bigger office to a smaller office. That's why the co-working space in Hong Kong, actually, their pricing doesn't change because a lot of people, they're looking into a smaller, office settings. So that's why, the bigger office space, they reduce their tenants, not necessarily for the co-working space. So that's why these three dimensions, I'll deep dive a little bit into those areas, but fundamentally, that's what Agile management is for. Of course, that's why I'm saying it doesn't really mean that you need to hire a person to do it, because those dimensions, either you have somebody, support you from the business point of view, or maybe even as the owner of the organizations, you can also do these kind of processes. That's no problem at all, because even though I'm a HR professional, I don't believe that HR is rocket science. Everybody can do HR. And also, we always encourage our line manager to support as a people manager as well, right? So it doesn't really matter. So that's why this workshop is that we are not focusing on HR, we're focusing on the function. So that means, a satisfied staff is the foundation of a thriving company, and people management or people practices is the cement, that holds it together. So that's why I think it's important to understand where we can contribute, and also what sort of things that we need to look at. So looking at these three dimensions, we get into a little bit more focus on some of the ideas that we want to share, from the HR practices point of view. So under vitality and also business continuity, we're looking into a few dimensions here. So let me just go back. Yeah, so for example, like we look into compliance, we look into recruitment, employee safety, and also HR planning and succession plan and data analytics. Yeah, so those are the fundamental parts that support the business to make sure that they have the foundations. Because some of the things that you can't get away with, for example, compliance. Okay, so I'll deep dive a little bit on that. The second thing is about productivity and efficiency. So we look at the manpower resource planning, and also we look at performance. How does it look like in terms of engagement? Because that is very, very much correlate between the engagement part versus the efficiency part. So that again, I will go into a little bit more with the correlations of that. And of course, as long as you've got employees in the organization, I think it makes sense to continue to grow them, to give them support on their development perspective. With regards to cost savings, so we will look into staff turnover, retention strategy, and also from the risk perspective, because those are the things that will cost you money. Yeah, so because again, I've got people coming in saying that, in particular for SME situations, they can't retain people due to various reasons, right? Because of their brand or because of their, the business they're running, or so on and so forth. So people come to ask questions. So why I cannot retain my talents in my small, organization? So we look into that as well. So of course, first of all, as I said, some of the things that you can't get away with, this is the compliance bit. So for example, this is more relevant to Japan, there is a minimum wage requirement. Is that something that we need to look at? And how does it look like in terms of like calculating overtime? And how many days, we need to give, advance notice of a dismissal, or even can we do the dismissal in Japan? Because, I've been working, supporting the Japan market. I know it's challenging to terminate someone. And how does it look like in terms of like, managing a pregnant employee, when they can resume work, or is there any complications in terms of childcare, so on and so forth, and also the work injury part. Yeah, so those are the core. When you run a business, this is something that you cannot get away with. The same thing applies to Korea market. Okay, so again, like a minimum wage, and also is that make sure that we have the NPS in place. Again, in Korea, I understood that also it is very, very difficult to get into a termination process, and also the tax rules and the work-related injury as well. Yeah, so as a business owner, those are the things that is very, very, important, just to make sure that you don't break the law or get into some sort of like employee, like relationships trouble. Because my experience working in the Korea market, in particular dealing with the unions. Yeah, so luckily, at that time when I was working, look after Korea, my previous company ended up, there wasn't any, like staff unions formed. But I know a lot of the retailers at that moment, they do have their, staff union. So that's why even more complicated when you negotiate with all the terms with the unions. But of course, for the smaller companies, they probably don't have that in place. I guess this is also, like key and very important to make sure that there is no kind of, breaking that trust in between the employer and the employees, the relationship. I mean, in Hong Kong, we don't have that. Lucky or not, well, except for really, really big organizations. When I work in the airlines, yeah, we do have a staff union, a very, very strong, pilot and also cabin crew unions. So that's why everything come down to the negotiations on the table. Whereas other, like relatively smaller organizations, probably they don't have that in place. So maybe less complicated issues. However, in majority of times in Asia, the labor ordinance, what we call, or the employment ordinance, in that particular country is actually more protective of the employees. So as an employer, we always very, very careful just to make sure that we abide to the law. Yeah, so I think that is something everybody should across that. And also when we look at business continuity, right? So we look at, like a few other dimensions as well. Manpower planning. Yeah, I've got clients, when I ask them about how you do your planning over the budget year or whatsoever, so they don't have any idea, because they feel like that, this year, maybe this month, I want to hire 2 people. And then next month, I feel like that my business grow, so I want to hire another 2 people. Yeah, they can do that, and also majority of times people like this, like the company, they want to hire here and there. They probably don't have a very concrete plan at the beginning of the year. Whereas, of course, ideally speaking, we should look ahead, from the business outlook, and then decide how does it look like in terms of the manpower. Are we phasing in, all the manpower with different functions, or like how we look at the planning itself, because that actually will impact the whole P&L of your organization. And this actually relates to resources allocation, right? As that example, like one of my clients as the fashion designer, I mean, she has been employing different part-timers depending on the job. So she might have an event in the next 3 months. So she has to hire different part-timers to help support her to organize the event. And even she needs to hire those models because all those models, they need to like wear the clothes and then do the catwalk and so on and so forth. So that's why everything come in an ad hoc model. So she might think, okay, so next 3 months I've got this, and then I plan, and then maybe 6 months later she plan again. So it's really difficult sometimes in managing the, from a continuity perspective. And of course, like when we make the decision, how does it look like? In particular, with the COVID situations, a lot of decisions have to be made in terms of, maintaining the business outlook, whether it should be agile enough. So planning is important, but at the same time, like if we are able to get a, like a more proper processes in place, it will also facilitate the decision making. At the same time, we need to look at the employee safety. As I said, a lot of the Asian countries, they're focusing a lot of occupational health and safety. Like we need to make sure that we measure, the workplace environment, and also with the, with COVID, of course, introducing flexible work, or even, like make sure that we have a proper medical coverage for our employees. So again, like HR practices or people management practices, we can facilitate that. And at the end of the day, we also need to look at the succession. Even though it's a small company, I realize that I think probably 90% of my SME clients, they don't have succession plans. So every single knowledge, like the operations, and even with all the IPs are actually sitting at the head, inside the head of the founder or for the owner, right? So that is the challenge of maintaining a proper succession of the company, because I realized that if nobody actually can look after the company on behalf of the owner is always there. And also the flip side of that is the team is not able to perform very well because everything has to go back to the owner. They can't really make very autonomous decisions on the business, like operations point of view. Yeah, so I think from these areas, just a very quick reminder of the business owners that they need to look at those perspective. Succession planning is very important. So let's deep dive a little bit, like why we need to look at engagement, and how does it correlate with productivity. So that is indeed a formula when you really want to measure, like productivity is the number of items or goods or services provided divided by the number of units or work hours invested. Okay, so it looks like it's very, like not so straightforward, right? But basically, what we're looking at employee engagement is the extent to which employees feel passionate about their job, and also whether they committed to the organization and they are willing to put discretionary effort into their work. So successful organizations are value driven with employee-centric cultures. So all actually link together. If they are really passionate and they are committed to their work, of course, the productivity will go up. So that's why we actually encourage to have a more effective employee engagement strategy. So of course, the upside is that we can motivate staff with job satisfaction and also career development. They really want to put in extra efforts into their work, and pay, like also willing to stay on there because they feel like this is a career development for them. And that makes employees feel valued and respected, and drive performance and higher productivity. Okay, so looking and also retain top performers and attract new talents. Yeah, because they all come together when people feel valued, and also there is a very transparent company culture. People feel that, okay, so they stay on to the organization. They feel they can develop their career in the longer term. At the same time, they will be the ambassador of your company, right? So they can actually market your company to other potential people who would like to join. And for those in particular, for those top performers, you want to retain them. Employees with higher employee engagement is actually with over 20% of higher productivity than the competitors. Yeah, I think my experience with my clients is that, because one client, they were actually operating with the medical device business. So they run the business for more than 20 years now, but realize that their business has been stuck. Yeah, because the employees are actually, they are just paying the minimal efforts into their job. So that they won't do anything above and beyond anymore. And the business owner actually feel a little bit frustrated about that. So we need to look at what sort of things that we can work on to really improve that, because that will directly impact the productivity, and therefore, the organization has been stagnant. Even though with the business itself has been great potential in that space. So what are the key drivers then to create a high productivity team? So there are a few things there that I want to share. So first of all, communications of goals, missions, and directions. I realized that a lot of SME, they have the passion. They really, want to have this business grow and, sustainable. Unfortunately, over time, the mission and the goals has been forgotten. So employees, that's why I'm saying, the same thing happened with a medical device company. The founder has a real passion of providing these quality products to their clients. Unfortunately, the staff, they forgot about it. They feel like this is a chore. Every day come into the office and then I have to go and sell the product to the clients. They don't realize that they have been contributing, to the society, and also they forgot about the mission. So that's why clear communication and also constant communication about the company goals is important. Yeah, it's been forgotten most of the time. Measure performance. I realized that a lot of companies, they also, they've been overlooked about the performance. They feel like that, oh yeah, my staff, they're already very familiar with the organizations. They've been here for 20 years. No need to measure performance. They can do their job. But not really, yeah, because they get used to it. And then there's not really any driver for them, because nobody tell them how they've been performing, whether they're performing good or whether they're performing badly. Yeah, nobody actually really recognize that. So I think a proper employee performance management system, and also even the process itself is important. People need to know what they're performing, how they're performing, and also what sort of things that they can work on to improve. People development and training. Yeah, so as I said, people looking not only for benefits or not looking into the salary, but they're looking into, development, a long-term career, whether they can actually really contribute. So that's why development and training is important. But what I mean here, training, not necessarily to be, like a very formal training. I always tell the SME owners, even you sit down with your employee on one-on-ones, try to coach the employee on things, on how to maybe deal with a certain client, or maybe, to fulfill a certain process. Is already a training. So not necessarily to have a formal classroom. Day to day, you can actually do little, on the spot coaching is already a very good initiative. Of course, at the same time, linked with the performance management or the appraisal is the constant feedback. For owners, I also encourage them to receive feedback too. I think it's not necessarily only for the manager to give feedback to the employee, but at the same time, they need to, able to do a two-dimensional, like a kind of feedback, so the employee can also share feedback back to the employer. Equipment and workplace conditions, that's pretty self-explanatory. Once again, we'll talk about how work health and safety. This is all related. The last one is about social in ESG. Of course, I'll go into a little bit about ESG, but in there, the social part, including all the wellness point of view, all the aspects will be important also to engage your employees and also to drive high productivity as well. So that is also a formula to look at a quick math on, like based on very, very conservative calculation. We look at, 10%, if we assume a 10% drop in productivity for disengaged employees, and assuming, like that actually costs 4 times output of your staff cost. Okay, so look at, a company with 100 employees, like assuming that this engagement rate is 50%. And that means we have like 50 disengaged staff. Per average annual salary per staff is 200,000. So in equivalent, because we're talking about 10% drop, so that means out of that 200,000, 20,000 is actually overpaid because they are disengaged. So that's why it's not fully utilized. So that means when you look at the math, the total overpaid salary is 1 million. Together with the 80%, like the 80% of that, because it's 4 times output of the staff cost. So when you look at that 20,000, assuming 4 times output, that will actually drop is $80,000 for each disengaged employees. And the total is 4 million. Okay, so look at the numbers. It seems, wow, quite a lot, right? Like if we assume, 10% of your employees is actually not engaged. So it's really cost you like, like $5 million a year down the drain solely because of disengaged employees. Yeah, but because if you look at that 1 million plus that 4 million, okay. So I think, it's, of course, this is like a anticipated, like cost, but in a nutshell, what you're looking at is that if you don't have 100% fully engaged employees, that actually every month when you pay out for your salary, that is something is already gone. Yeah, because it's not 100% effective. So when you look at staff retention, we talk about cost saving, right? Yeah, so how does it look like in terms of cost saving? So let's look at some numbers as well. Okay, so how much does this cost for staff turnover? A lot of SME owners, they came to me saying that, that's fine. If somebody left the company, we just hire another person. Yeah, because we are a very, very small company. We only have 20 people. Nobody would like to join us. So yeah, that's fine. If they leave the company, we just hire them and hire another replacement. However, when you look at the actual math or the actual numbers, when you do look at staff turnover, it's actually quite a lot too. So we estimate, if a normal employee or a general staff, it costs you 33% of your employee salary. For middle management, mid-level is even more, like 150%. And a high-level staff, so maybe a director or even, a COO, that will cost you 400% of a high-level employee's salary. So how does it look like? Why those numbers? Okay, so what are the hidden costs then? Okay, so of course, when you look at the time and the effort of recruitment, onboarding, and the training, and finding the replacement, right? Because yeah, it takes time to hire a suitable candidate to join your company. At the same time, it's a negative impact to morale and productivity. So once again, when we went back to the numbers, if people are not productive, that means it's a cost there. And something, this is more intangible, is the loss of organization knowledge. Yeah, a lot of the SMEs, they only have one person in that particular function. For example, accounting. It's only one person doing all the books and doing all the financial statements. If that person left, there's nobody is actually doing the job. And a lot of times there wasn't any documentation to retain all those knowledge. So that's why nobody can pick it up immediately. So that is a losing of the organization knowledge. Even costing more is the founder or the CEO usually heavily involved in this process of recruitment, induction, and also at the same time, they occupy their time for business development. So that means, even costing more to actually constantly having staff turnover in the organization. My experience to my SME clients is that I would rather, encourage them to keep their employees with of course, different fundamentals and also with different remedies, I would say, rather than keep hiring new people to the organizations. It actually costs you a lot. So that's why from the HR people management point of view, we will support to look into the strategies and some, because, of course, one reason is that because of the organization, they don't have the certain brand, they can't hire the right person. However, at the same time, we also need to look at the recruitment process itself and also the onboarding and so on and so forth. So it's all linked together. So do you know why your staff quit their job? So a quick, reason behind, of course, those are quite straightforward to look at those, when people actually look at career development as their high top priority, whether they want to leave their job. Of course, it also combining with, the relationship with the manager and so on and so forth. So a couple of things you can do to prevent staff turnover. So invest in employee development, continuous feedback, both ways, train your managers. I think, managing staff is also a core fundamentals for managers, able to be able to coach their staff, and transparency on company directions. Provide a healthy work-life balance in the organization, and hire the right candidates to begin with. Yeah, those are all interlinked together. So a little bit sharing of the ESG. I mean, everybody across that, those are the also up and coming, a lot of considerations for organizations, not only for large organizations, but also with the smaller organizations. We talk about governance, social environment, social and governance. So under the ESG, I would more concerned about the social part, because that is more relevant to the people, processes. Of course, governance is part of it because of the compliance bit, but I think it's also very, very helpful if a small organizations, they build the social element into the the company brand. In particular for startup and SMEs, I think that is more attractive. At the same time, it's actually more balanced. When people join your company, we are not looking into just really drive them very hard for work, but at the same time, how to balance their well-being and also how to balance diversity and so on and so forth. Yeah, so those are the elements that we need to look at as well. So I've shared quite a bit about, those HR practices or people management kind of practices for owners. But how does it work then? We all have limited resources. So where shall we get into all these? Because it looks like it's so many dimensions. You cannot address all of them in one go. I always give advice to my clients is that, like prevention is really, really better than cure. So we need to prevent something happening rather than, things happen and then you identify and then you remedy, like to do actions to fix it. So that is something that obviously, like I would like to share, something that we can help you on is, we are, like an enterprise doctor, because we will go into the organizations to support and also to, discover any potential issue and how to avoid those. And I will support the owner to set up the priorities and also complete by stages, because it doesn't need to be, everything have to fix all together. And that is the more a preventive health advice for your organization, to have really a health check. So we make use of this excellence benchmark portal, and it's I collaborated, with the Hong Kong QA. We'll explain a little bit more. This organization is an official organization for the ISO, like accreditation in Hong Kong. It's a global recognized organization as well. So we look into, do a checkup, on your people processes standards to point out some improvement area or remedy issues, and to achieve success through different strategies and operations. So we provide a free online assessment, a couple of questions just to give you a kind of snapshot of how does it look like. And it's a very simple way to improve performance, and it's also essential for the business. So it's only like a 20-minute health checkup online. So we will, after the online assessment, we'll do a deeper evaluation of your processes and also come up with a solution. Yeah, so we base on the, the answers of the checkup, and then we'll tailor-make a solution for that organizations. The nutshell of this assessment is to, put into the people practices functions in place. We deep dive into different areas, different perspective, and to assess where you are and where you want to be, and remedy any issues, or with any preventive measures as well. So Hong Kong QA, a little bit of the introduction. So they also do a lot of ISO related like work with the organizations across the board. So that's why I, my company partner with them to make sure that this excellence benchmark portal is relevant and also up to the standard of the more, the related to all the people management practices. So we look at 10 core people management areas. So those are the areas that we briefly talk about today. Of course, as I said, in the SME environment, there's not necessarily to do all these. A lot of the owners, they don't know how does it look like in terms of data and analytics. At the beginning, no, not really. You don't need a system to do it. Even very, very simple Excel can do. Just give you some insights about where your company stands in terms of people. We'll provide a tailor-made report on each of the areas, and we will give you advice on the comments and also suggestions on each of the area. Okay, so a little bit, like our trial here. If you want to do a quick baseline assessment, it's complimentary. Only a couple of questions, and we'll give you some ideas of how does it look like in terms of HR practices. If you want to do it, yeah, feel free to do it afterwards. And also, because this event is actually a joint event between, the two chambers. So I'm happy to also offer, a discount for any members or your friends or any of your connections if they want to try out the actual excellent benchmark or the benchmark premium sessions. You can actually go into our website to do it, and then you can contact us for a discount code. Okay, so basically that's the kind of the end of the sharing. I hope I actually give everyone a very high level kind of summary of why HR practices is actually important to an organization. There's no need to look at any fancy stuff, because my experience working in a large organization is we have so many different strategies, right? We have a global strategy, and then I look after Asian market. We have to tailor-make the Asian kind of strategies. At the same time, I always feel like HR is really, really core and is fundamental. It's just looking into people practices, whether you feel like it's fair, both ways. And also at the same time, how to facilitate your people to stay behind, and they are able to support you more on the productivity and more efficient kind of working environment. Yeah, and then to support your company to grow. So I would look at it as a very basic functions here, but of course with some help. I think for business owners, you guys will be more able to grasp this kind of concept more easier. So without a proper like a 10 people HR department in your organizations. Okay, so that's about it, I think, for my sharing. I'll leave it with some time if any questions available. Okay, I just stopped sharing the screen first. Anyone? Okay. I think I've got a question or comment here. Maybe I can address that from the chat room. So what's most important ingredient of a high performing culture? Okay. Good questions from Ryan. In my experience, managing the client, in particular for SME, so the ingredients is that they actually really to go above and beyond. Because imagine, like working in a large organization. If one person is not performing, to be honest, like you have loads of other people to support. And within the, within the small team, right? So, so within the same department, if one person is not, you can actually easily to assign someone to take over the job. In a small organization, it's not. So I think the most critical ingredients is that people are willing to go for above and beyond, and also at the same time, they are really, like join force. I always say that entrepreneurship mindset is important. So the employees actually, they feel like this is their own company. So we encourage business owners to share, if possible, to share the company vision and mission, and also the business development, and also all the forecasts of the company to the employees in a more transparent way. Because this is actually form a formal, like a transparency in the company culture. And at the same time, my experience also, people are more willing to sell their own company, like as a market, as I said, as an ambassador. A lot of times when you need to hire people in small organizations, referral is actually a very, very good avenue to attract people to join, because already a staff, they are very familiar with the organization. They can sell the opportunity to their friends or connections, and the connection willing to stay because they have a companion in the organization, right? So I think that is more also one of the indicator or the ingredient of a high performing culture. So I hope that I can answer your question.
Thank you so much for wrapping that one up, Elsie, with the question. It seems like we have one more question actually from Katsuki. What are some of the measures which HR can do to implement the mission, etc.? If you would like to answer that question as well before we wrap up.
Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah, thank you. So I think, first of all, the mission itself, again, like it really come down to the owner or the CEO to be very clear of that. HR's role is really to support, to make it as a more, I would say, translate to a more understanding language. Because I realize that a lot of times the mission is very broad, HR's role or the HR's functions role is to really to make it more a practical type of practices. For example, if I have one of my clients, actually they are AI company, so their mission is creative and also provide a sustainable environment for people. Okay, so what does it mean by sustainable environment, right? That's the vision of the company owner, so provide AI solutions. But at the same time, what does it mean to employees? Because as an employee, there's not really any direct relationship to build that sustainable environment, right? So HR's function is to put into practice. So in that case, what is sustainable? That means if we provide a certain product that can create that sustainability to our clients, that will be great, like help them to create sustainable, environment, right? So I think we HR or HR function, we always as a translator, make sure that we understand from the founder or the CEO, what does it mean by mission? And then we'll put it into a more practical kind of solutions to our employees. Yeah, that's my view. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your answer and for such an insightful presentation, Elsie. I'm sure that the viewers of today's webinar will have a lot to take away, and I'm looking forward to seeing some revived HR policies from our members. I would also like to extend my thanks to the Australian and New Zealand Chamber of Commerce in Japan for co-hosting this event with us, and to everyone who joined us from Australia, Korea, Japan, and the broader APAC region. Thank you for your questions, everyone. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to the AustCham Korea team or the ANZCCJ Japan team, and we will be sure to get back to you. As Emily mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we will be uploading it onto our social media channels, so keep an eye out for that as well. Until next time, thank you, and we hope you all have a lovely Tuesday. Special thanks to Elsie for such a wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, see you soon.
Bye.